Arosani, a quiet, slow-moving Romanian town where doors were rarely locked and neighbors greeted each other like family. But in 2010, that calm shattered. A gruesome discovery tore through the town's peaceful rhythm like a scream in the dark. The kind of crime that doesn't just make headlines, it embeds itself in nightmares. And at the center of it all, a soft-spoken elderly woman with a name now spoken only in hushed tones, the Butcher of Botosani. Her name? Elena Văduva. To those who knew her, she was the definition of harmless, a frail widow with kind eyes, always ready with a warm hello or a plate of homemade food. The kind of woman you'd trust to water your plants, feed your cat. But behind that smile lived something else, something unhinged, something horrifying. Behind her lace curtains and doilies, Elena wasn't knitting or watching soap operas. She was writing, filling notebooks with chilling thoughts, coded nightmares written in Romanian, English, and German. Not fiction, not fantasy, a record of her inner descent. How does someone so ordinary commit something so monstrous? How does a grandmother slip through the cracks and become a ghost with blood on her hands? This is the story of Elena Văduva, a woman whose crimes remained buried for decades, until the day her secrets finally spilled into the light. Elena's story began in Dorohoi, a quiet post-war Romanian town where the winters were long and life was harder. Born on March 17, 1942, she was just another child in a place forgotten by time, a world away from the energy of Bucharest or Cluj-Napoca. There's almost nothing on record about her early life. No red flags, no cries for help, no trauma that might explain what came next. Just a quiet girl who grew up in silence, until that silence turned into something deeply unnatural. After school, Elena wanted more. Not more love, more joy, more places to hide. She moved to ISE and studied linguistics, excelling in languages the way others excel at lies. Intelligent, charismatic, magnetic, she became whatever people needed her to be. But evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it just learns how to blend in better than anyone else. The 1960s brought change to Romania. Factories, noise, and faces in the crowd. In Timisoara, Elena met Petru, a quiet city planner. They married quickly and moved into a stark, concrete apartment, the kind of place that echoed with footsteps and secrets. Elena kept up the illusion for decades. Travel agent by day, polite hostess by night, she guided tourists with charm and made neighbors feel safe, the kind of woman you'd never look twice at. And that's exactly how she liked it. Then, without warning, Petru vanished. She told police he'd run off with a mistress. No missing posters, no search, just a shrug and silence. Elena went back to watering her plants as if her husband had never existed. Elena turned her home into a boarding house. Strangers came, paid rent, then left. Fast. Neighbors whispered about midnight arguments and thumps in the walls. But no one asked questions. In Botosani, silence was safer than the truth. In a drawer by her bedside she kept a diary, not of memories but of madness. Rituals, deaths, names scratched out like shopping lists. Florina was nearly 80, a retired seamstress with tired bones and fading strength. She needed a hand, someone she could trust. What she got was Elena. At 67, Elena needed temporary shelter while her apartment underwent renovations. Florina, kind but cautious, opened her home. It felt like a simple favor, just two elderly women sharing space. But Elena made herself too comfortable. She didn't lift a finger, didn't help, didn't leave. Days turned into weeks. Florina's patience, already thin, began to fray. Finally, she asked Elena to leave. That should have ended things. It didn't. Elena flat out refused, as if she'd never heard the request, as if the apartment was hers now. Then came the spark that lit the fuse, a fight over dirty dishes. Small, stupid, but something in Elena fractured. Florina yelled. Elena didn't. She just sat still, staring, calculating. Florina wanted her gone. Elena decided she'd stay, no matter what it took. She needed a plan. So she boarded a bus to a nearby city and sweet-talked a pharmacist into selling her a high-dose sedative, the kind used for severe insomnia. Not easy to come by, not meant to be taken lightly. She didn't want to hurt Florina. She wanted her out of the way. 50 pills, that's how much she figured it would take. That evening, Elena made dinner. Salada de boeuf. Florina's favorite, a rich traditional dish, comfort food, nostalgic. Elena diced the vegetables, stirred the mayonnaise, added the meat, and mixed in all 50 pills. One by one, she served it with a smile, and waited. She barely blinked. She waited in silence. Florina ate the entire plate, complimented the seasoning, said it tasted just like her mother used to make. Then she yawned. Her speech slurred. Her body sagged. Within an hour, she collapsed. Elena didn't panic. She didn't even rush. She simply watched Florina crumple onto the floor like a doll that had lost its strings. Some say she was still alive when Elena found her hours later. But by then, mercy wasn't an option. Florina was heavy, too heavy to drag. So Elena fetched her tools. Not knives. A rusted handsaw. She rolled up her sleeves, took a deep breath, and began to dismember the body right there in the kitchen. Bone cracked, blood pooled, time disappeared. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She worked like she'd done this before. Some pieces vanished entirely. The rest, carefully wrapped in layers of plastic, sealed with duct tape. 7 bags, 7 trips. One by one, Elena walked them down to the nearby pond under the cover of darkness. Surveillance cameras caught it all. An old woman with shopping bags, slowly feeding the water her secret. But the water didn't keep it. 3 days later, it gave something back. "Come in," Elena chirped, her tone unsettlingly bright. The apartment was eerily pristine. Surfaces gleamed, air freshener lingered. But the small things, the ones that matter, told a different story. A torn shower curtain, smudges of blood in the grout between tiles, the faint metallic smell that cleaning spray couldn't mask. And no sign of Florina. When detectives asked where she was, Elena didn't hesitate. "You caught me," she said, smiling. No resistance, no tears, just quiet satisfaction, like she'd been waiting for this moment. She confessed everything, the argument, the sedatives, the handsaw, the bags. It spilled out of her with calm precision, like reading from a script she'd rehearsed 100 times. But the real horror hadn't even begun. Because Florina, she was just the latest. Investigators soon uncovered something chilling. A diary, worn leather, dozens of entries written in Romanian, English, and German. At first, it read like a retiree's notebook. Grocery lists, weather notes, coffee preferences. But between the lines, madness. It was annoying me, so I cut him up in the bathroom, bagged him, left pieces in different neighborhoods. Each entry colder than the last. Vasile Dragan disappeared without a trace. Sergio Balan found in pieces, never identified until now. It wasn't a diary, it was a kill log. Meticulous, remorseless, intimate. And it didn't stop there. One entry matched a body found back in 2003. No limbs, no head, just a torso pulled from a drainage canal. The case had gone cold, until Elena casually described the victim's tattoos down to their placement and color. A match, case closed, another secret unearthed. But buried even deeper in the diary was something worse, unspeakable. I tasted it. No context, no explanation, just a line scratched in ink. Was it a confession? A fantasy? Or something far more disturbing? There was no proof, no evidence of cannibalism, but once the idea was out there, no one could ignore it. Had she fed it to someone? Had dinner guests unknowingly shared more than a meal? That question would haunt investigators and Romania for years. Some questions are too horrifying to answer. This was one of them. On July 29, 2009, Elena Nicolescu was brought to court. Not through the front doors like everyone else, through the basement, flanked by armed guards, shackled and placed inside a metal cage, bolted to the courtroom floor. Like a predator on display. She hated it. "I'm being treated like a beast," she shouted. But the truth? She had earned that cage. Despite the restraints, Elena thrived on the attention. She smiled for cameras, turned to reporters like a stage performer addressing her audience. "I knew this day would come," she said. She claimed she wasn't alone in her mind, that a maniac had haunted her, whispered to her, pushed her toward blood. "He made me do it." Was it a voice in her head? A lie? A strategy? No one knew. She offered no explanation, just another riddle in a case already drowning in madness. Inside the courtroom, Elena was chaos in a dress. She wept, then grinned. One moment she looked like a heartbroken grandmother. The next she blew kisses, laughed at nothing, smirked at the judge. And then came the moment that silenced the entire room. With zero emotion, she stood up and declared it was all deliberate. She had planned this for 10 years. Not for revenge, not out of anger, but for recognition. She wanted to be remembered. A woman with no legacy, building one in blood. Elena didn't run from justice. She walked straight into it. Because with Florina gone, she had nothing. No family, no home, no one left to pretend for. Prison wasn't a punishment, it was her destination. As the verdict was read, Elena didn't cry. She clapped. Slow, proud, like a playwright hearing applause at the end of her final act. She was exactly where she wanted to be. But even with a full confession, investigators held back. They couldn't close the file. Why? Because Elena kept rewriting her own story. One day she said she was a former stage actress, famous across Europe. Another day she claimed to have worked in luxury hotels, serving foreign diplomats. None of it was true. She lied easily, constantly. Her stories contradicted each other, spun in loops, always just out of reach. Was it manipulation? Or madness? Either way, detectives stopped listening to her words and turned to what they could prove. And what they had was damning. CCTV footage showed her, bag by bag, dumping Florina's dismembered remains into the pond. They even caught her carrying a large saucepan believed to contain Florina's severed head and hands. Those parts were never found. The full truth? Still missing, still rotting somewhere no one will ever look. By November 2009, Elena had been behind bars for months. But there was one final question left. Was she even sane enough to stand trial? The court ordered a full psychological evaluation. The results? Clear. Elena was a danger to herself and to everyone around her. Her mind was fractured, her grip on reality slipping through her fingers like sand. And no one, not the doctors, not the courts, not even Elena herself, knew just how far her darkness really went. Elena's mind wasn't just broken, it was a labyrinth. Twisted, fragmented, spiraling in ways that even seasoned psychiatrists struggled to decode. By December, she was quietly moved to a high-security psychiatric facility in Kazan, a place designed for the truly dangerous, the ones who don't just break laws, they break reality. While she sat behind locked doors, investigators kept digging. They went back to the beginning, tracing her life like a trail of forgotten fingerprints, interviewing neighbors, old classmates, distant relatives, anyone who had ever crossed paths with Elena. What they uncovered was deeply unsettling. She wasn't just interested in crime, she was obsessed. Especially with Andrei Chikatilo, the Red Ripper, a Russian cannibal and one of the most sadistic serial killers in history. Elena had studied his methods, read every word written about him, watched old interviews, marked pages, made notes. She admired how he hid in plain sight. She wanted that. And then came something more chilling. A neighbor remembered that years earlier, Elena had borrowed a hacksaw and never gave it back. At the time, it was a harmless favor between neighbors. Now, It was a bone-deep memory they'd never shake. But the most disturbing discovery? Elena had been institutionalized multiple times over the last 15 years, in and out of psychiatric care, diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, her mind riddled with delusions, violent urges, and hallucinations that blurred the line between fantasy and murder. So the question became, had Elena ever truly been in control? Or had madness become the only thing steering the wheel? In the end, it didn't matter. Because one thing was clear, she could never walk free. And the more investigators read her diary, the darker things got. It wasn't just Florina, or Petru, or the handful of names she casually listed. There were pages, lists, descriptive entries, each one colder than the last. Names, methods, dates. At least 11 to 14 victims, possibly more. But proving it? That was the real nightmare. Because there were no bodies, no evidence, just ink and horror. The diary spoke of rituals, cannibalism, experiments. Were they real? Or just the fantasies of a mind spiraling into madness? Police couldn't say. Maybe they never will. But one thing they were certain of? Elena had killed her husband, the man who'd supposedly run off with another woman. He hadn't gone anywhere. Investigators now believed Elena had murdered him, dismembered him, disposed of him, piece by piece, just like the others. But without a body, they couldn't prove it. He had vanished, like so many others in her orbit, swallowed by the silence she left behind. And so Elena Nicolescu remains locked away, deep inside a high-security psychiatric institution. She will never be released. She will never stand trial. And the full truth? It may have already died with her secrets. We may never know the true extent of her killings, one investigator admitted. Perhaps one day she'll tell us everything, but almost no one believes that day will ever come. Her story isn't just disturbing, it's baffling. Unlike most women who kill for revenge, money, or love, Elena killed for none of those things. No motive, no pattern, no clear endgame. Only a black hole of violence she kept feeding, maybe without even knowing why. And the most terrifying part? She might not be the only one. Elena Văduva became more than a name. She became a legend of fear. And in Romania's quiet corners, her shadow still lingers. Love true crime that hits different? Hit like, smash subscribe, and stick around. Because the darkest stories are just getting started. What do you think drove Elena madness, or pure evil? Drop your theory in the comments. And remember, trust no one.